GameFile reported, or that publishers can pay Sony or Microsoft more than $10 on a $70 physical copy through the platform licensing and default production arrangement. Tech4Gamers highlighted that reporting and turned the figure into exactly the sort of headline guaranteed to make the internet start doing economics with crayons. Immediately, people saw more than $10 and assumed the shiny plastic disc itself costs about as much as lunch. Wrongly, because the number is not $10 of plastic, cardboard, and mysterious factory wizardry. Specifically, it covers a platform charge tied to licensing and physical production, while shipping, retailer costs, marketing, development, taxes, support, and other expenses still exist. Where does the customer's share of the saving go when the disc disappears? Digital distribution removes manufacturing boxed inventory, warehouses, physical shipping, and the risk of unsold stock. Meanwhile, the $70 launch price often survives every efficiency improvement, like a cockroach wearing body armor. Conveniently, publishers reduce physical risk, platform holders gain tighter control, and used copies stop wandering back into the market to compete with new ones. Customers get instant downloads, preloads, remote installs, and the exciting privilege of owning something they usually cannot sell to the bloke sitting beside them. Better yet, the $10 figure is not even the most important part. Ownership is. Resale matters. Control matters most. Ultimately, this is not a story about a disc. Rather, it is about what disappears with that disc, who benefits, and why the full price button seems to have survived the apocalypse. Before anyone starts screaming that digital games should therefore cost $10, that argument is nonsense. Development costs enormous amounts of money, employees need salaries, servers need maintenance, storefronts take fees, and marketing budgets behave like small military campaigns. Nevertheless, when companies praise digital distribution as cheaper, cleaner, and more efficient, customers are allowed to ask one painfully simple question. Why does efficiency become a corporate benefit before it becomes a consumer benefit? More importantly, by the end of this, the missing $10 will probably seem like the least interesting thing we lost. Now, if watching modern gaming explain why less ownership is somehow progress sounds like you're kind of suffering, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and feed the YouTube algorithm before it decides another 15-second clip of somebody screaming at a menu deserves all human attention. Anyway, back to the miraculous business model, where removing an entire delivery format somehow leaves the customer's price in perfect health. Seriously, nobody is claiming digital distribution costs nothing, because bandwidth, payment processing, customer support, platform infrastructure, taxes, development, and ongoing services do not vanish when the box does. What changes is that physical copies carry extra costs and complications that digital copies avoid. Therefore, the fair question is whether customers should receive some combination of lower prices, stronger ownership rights, transferable licenses, lasting access, or anything else in exchange for giving up those physical advantages. Nintendo, rather inconveniently for everyone pretending physical and digital prices must always match, has already shown that the two formats can be priced differently. Beginning in May 2026, Nintendo said certain new Switch 2 games would carry different physical and digital, because the formats involve different production and distribution costs. Importantly, that gives every customer a clean question for every other publisher. If physical costs more to produce and distribute, why does removing those costs so rarely create a dependable launch day discount? Electronic Arts provides the next cheerful exhibit in this museum of modern commerce. According to EA's fiscal 2026 filing, 81% of measured console units were sold digitally. Buried in the same filing is the sort of sentence executives probably whisper lovingly before bed. Costs associated with selling digitally are generally lower than selling through traditional retail and distribution channels. Fine, businesses are supposed to care about margins. However, customers are also allowed to notice when the lecture about efficiency ends exactly where their wallet begins. Cheaper distribution, though, is not actually the part that should worry you most. Circana's numbers show just how quickly the market has changed. Across the United States, physical game sales fell from 292 million units in the 12 months ending June 2009 to roughly 37 million in the 12 months ending June 2026. Roughly, that is an 87% collapse. Naturally, publishers did not achieve that alone. Gamers helped, collectively. We spent years downloading at midnight, embracing subscriptions, filling account-bound libraries, ignoring physical shops, and treating a password as the front door to ownership. Congratulations, civilization. Yet, convenience was never the only thing being exchanged. Physical games could be sold, lent, traded, gifted, discounted, or bought used. After somebody else discovered their $70 masterpiece was 12 hours of map icons and emotional damage. Account-bound purchases usually stay tied to one ecosystem, which means finishing a $70 digital game does not leave you with an object you can sell. Here is where the price argument becomes painfully simple. Imagine buying a physical game for $70, hating it, finishing it, and selling it for $40. Your mistake effectively cost $30. Next, imagine buying the digital version for $70, hating it just as much, finishing it, and discovering your resale value is a warm memory and a thumbnail in your library. Suddenly, the important thing was never the shiny round disc. Actual ownership had practical consequences, including the apparently radical idea that a customer could recover some money without requesting permission from a platform holder. Retail competition matters for exactly the same reason. Walk into a physical market, and one shop can undercut another, old stock can be cleared, bundles can appear, and used copies can sit beside new ones, like tiny plastic acts of economic terrorism. Enter a closed console storefront, and the geometry changes. One platform controls the main digital shop, decides when promotions happen, and never has to worry about a used copy undercutting the new version by $30. Competition gives sellers reasons to lower prices. Market control gives sellers reasons to discover how much customers will tolerate. At that point, this stops being a story about plastic. And now the industry has started giving us dates. Sony's announced January 2028 cutoff for disc production on new PlayStation releases turns the argument into something much larger than nostalgia for shelves and boxes. Its stated reasoning is that consumer preference has shifted heavily toward digital, while reporting around the announcement noted that nearly 4 out of 5 recent full-game PlayStation purchases were already digital. Fewer physical buyers, plus extra production costs, make discs less attractive. Internally, that spreadsheet probably looks magnificent. Externally, the disappearing disc also removes another rote around the platform holder's store. Notice how both statements can be true, without inventing a cartoon villain stroking a cat in a volcano base. Perhaps the funniest part is that the industry's strongest defense is also the accusation. Players prefer digital. Indeed, many of us do. Consumers chose speed, convenience, preloading, remote installs, cloud saves, and libraries that follow an account. None of that is fake. Equally, none of it means the trade has no downside. Every physical option that disappears moves a little more leverage toward the ecosystem owner. Each retailer that becomes irrelevant removes another place where price competition can happen. Then, the same industry can point at our behavior and say with a perfectly straight face that this is what customers wanted. Basically, we ordered the cage with free delivery and gave it 5 stars because assembly was easy. Publishers, to be fair, have a legitimate counter-argument. Games are not priced by adding up the plastic, the box, the truck, and then scribbling a profit margin on top. Budgets, salaries, marketing, platform fees, expected demand, competitor pricing, taxes, and what customers are willing to pay all matter far more than the manufacturing cost of one disc. Except that this also explains the problem perfectly. Whenever a new cost appears, we are told prices may need to rise. Conversely, when an old cost disappears, we are told pricing is more complicated than that. Marvelous. Technically, digital distribution does deserve some praise. Instant purchases, preloads, remote installs, and not driving across town at midnight are genuine improvements. Occasionally, technology really does remove pointless friction, and pretending otherwise would be nostalgic nonsense. Unfortunately, convenience is not the same thing as consumer power. Take away resale, lending, competing retailers, and transferable ownership, and the transaction itself changes. Call that progress if those losses do not matter to you. Describe it as efficiency if the trade still feels worthwhile. Just do not pretend the only thing vanishing is a circle of plastic. Beneath that plastic, sat options, and closed ecosystems have never been famous for encouraging customers to compare options too closely. Fundamentally, the villain here is not a disk factory. Nor is it digital gaming itself. Really, the villain is the closed digital ecosystem becoming the default, while customers receive convenience in exchange for surrendering leverage. Publishers reduce physical friction. Platform holders gain tighter control. Used game competition weakens. Retail pressure shrinks. Lovely arrangement if you own the button. Such a system does not require an evil mastermind, because ordinary incentives do the job perfectly well. Accurately stated, physical distribution has real extra costs. Digital distribution removes some of them, and consumers are giving up physical ownership benefits at the same time. Consequently, expecting some visible benefit in return is hardly revolutionary. Maybe that benefit should be lower prices. Stronger digital ownership rights would also count. Transferable licenses would certainly be interesting. Permanent library guarantees might help. Better refund systems would not exactly cause civilization to collapse either. Something would be nice. Otherwise, efficiency becomes a one-way escalator, where every improvement travels upward to the seller, and every compromise travels downward to you. First, the box goes. Afterward, the disc goes. Soon, resale shrinks. Eventually, competing retailers matter less. Strangely, your collection becomes a list of permissions displayed inside an account, while the $70 button survives every extinction event, like a cockroach hiding beneath the server rack. Buyers rewarded convenience, built enormous digital libraries, embraced subscriptions, and chose midnight downloads over shops. Executives looked at those numbers and, quite reasonably, asked why they were still manufacturing millions of physical copies. We helped build this system. Uncomfortably, that is the part nobody likes admitting. Obviously, nobody forced millions of people to choose the easier option year after year. Instead, we trained the market ourselves, then acted surprised when companies studied the lesson. Still, consumer preference does not make every consequence automatically good for consumers. Either way, the honest conversation begins by admitting what is actually being exchanged. So no, a $70 game does not magically become a $10 game because somebody removed the disc. Sharper, the question is why consumers keep surrendering ownership advantages, while digital efficiencies so rarely appear as a dependable launch price advantage. There is the real controversy. Corporations discovered how to reduce physical friction, inventory risk, retailer dependence, and second-hand competition, without teaching customers to expect meaningfully lower prices. Ironically, we discovered how convenient it is to own something that cannot be sold, lent, traded, or handed to the person beside us. Remember the question from the beginning. Reportedly, more than $10 of a $70 physical copy can go toward the platform licensing and default physical production arrangement. Once physical disappears, that does not mean $10 simply falls into somebody's pocket. Somehow it does mean another real cost disappears, while another consumer option disappears beside it. Curiously, when technology removes costs, the savings become complicated. Predictably, when technology creates a new monetization opportunity, the maths becomes crystal clear by lunchtime. No disc, less resale, fewer competing shops, tighter ecosystems, faster downloads, same $70 button. Finally, the future of gaming removed the box, weakened resale, reduced retail competition, increased platform control, and still remember to ask whether you would like the deluxe edition. Go do something that still works offline.